Well, that sucked. In the biggest game of the season, the Sacramento Kings get blown out at home by 36 points to the Dallas Mavericks, and I guess we got to talk about it. Mike Brown changes his tune, and despite giving up 132 points, blames Sacramento's offense for the loss tonight. Plus, how should we as Sacramento Kings fans feel about this game? We'll talk about it all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use promo code all lowercase LockedOnNBA when you sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and tonight just a letdown, right? This is not, coming into this game, of course, we knew how big of a battle this was, how much it meant for the standings, right? The first of a two-game mini playoff series against the Dallas Mavericks, both teams in a complete deadlock in the Western Conference playoff race, both battling for essentially the final guaranteed playoff spot and who would be the first of the play-in teams. Now, of course, these aren't the last two games of the regular season, so it's not like the race would be decided in these two games, but we knew what was at stake. The players obviously know what's at stake. Mike Brown has shared that they have a standings board that they update every single day in their locker room slash training room area. So they know what's at stake, obviously. We know what's at stake. The NBA knew what's at stake. This is a national TV game on TNT. The NBA couldn't be happier with having this game on national television, especially after that big double overtime Lakers win over the Milwaukee Bucks. It was set up to be a doubleheader of drama and awesomeness for the NBA, and the Kings fall flat on their faces. The first half was good. The Kings trailed by 6 points at halftime. It felt like they were getting destroyed, but in reality, it was just Luka Doncic that was scoring at will, right? 26 points in the first half alone. His first half stat line was just ridiculous. It was like, okay, this is the Luka Doncic show right now. But the second half, my goodness, the second half was boys playing against men. 74-43. The Kings were outscored in the second half by the Dallas Mavericks. Is this a wake-up call? Like I was talking about after last night's Kings win over the 76ers. The Kings held the 76ers to 96 points in that game. The Dallas Mavericks had 96 points before the end of the third quarter. So maybe it's a wake-up call like, yeah, the Kings have been playing excellent defense over the last 8 games. They've held their opponents under 110 for 8 straight games. 4 out of those 8, they've held their opponents under 100 points. Look at this newfound defense. The Kings are ready for the playoffs. That's literally what I said on this podcast last night. And then in a big game with playoff implications, a lot on the line, the Kings completely reverted back to what they've been defensively. But offensively, they continued with the struggles that they've had even during this good stretch, right? The Kings offense has had moments, but they've been winning a lot of these games recently because their defense has been holding opponents to under 110 points, while the offense is maybe scoring 110 or slightly above 110. The Kings have been winning a lot of 108 to like 98 or 99 games around this 8-game stretch. So maybe tonight was a wake-up call of, yeah, the Kings have been making progress, but in a massive game when it mattered the most, they still fell flat on their face. Defense is what I naturally want to focus on, what I planned on focusing on, right? When you give up 132 points, you're going to talk about that, right? When your defense has been looking so good and then gets obliterated, naturally that's the first thing that jumps off the page. And no surprise to any of us that the Kings defense is thought to be the biggest weakness of this Kings team. We've talked about defense so much over the course of the season. Now, I have brought up at times that I think the offense has taken a step back and the offense isn't good enough. And for the most part, that's been answered with, yeah, but on the defensive end, the Kings aren't doing enough. That's a lot of what Mike Brown has said. Well, the script is being flipped a little bit tonight because defensively, I was ready to talk about that and break that down and say, man, the Kings giving up 132 points, getting torched by Luka in the first half, but then the rest of the Mavericks supporting cast torching them in the second half. Like, check this out. Luka, 26 points in the first half, 2 points in the second half. That doesn't mean he was useless in the second half. He was doing a lot of the facilitating for his team and using that great first half and how the defense was reacting to his greatness to set up opportunities for his teammates. But look at what the Dallas Mavericks supporting cast did tonight, right? The Mavs as a team shot 22 of 39 from three-point range, 56% from beyond the arc. That has been an issue for Sacramento over the course of this year, but lately they've been doing a really good job defending the perimeter. Of course, the Mavericks bombard Sacramento with threes tonight. But it's not just the Mavericks, it's the supporting cast. Because basically, the guys who aren't named Kyrie Irving or Luka Doncic shot 14 of 22 from three-point range tonight. That's 63%. The Dallas Mavericks carved the Sacramento Kings apart and won this game as a team. Right, this was a team win for Dallas. And if I were Nick Angstead and the Locked On Mavericks podcast, I would be celebrating that more than that Luka Doncic first half because Luka Doncic was amazing and he started it all, rightfully so. But this Mavericks team beat the you-know-what out of Sacramento tonight. As a team, they were raining down threes. Now, in some ways, that makes me feel a little bit better about Friday, and that makes this game a little easier to swallow for me, and I'll get that or get to that later on in the podcast when I talk about how we should feel about this game as a fan base. But as a team, Dallas destroyed you. Right? So many guys got theirs. They were knocking down their shots. The Kings had absolutely no answer. So again, my focus was so much on the defensive end. Like, man, the Kings just did not look like how they've been playing defense recently, and they got obliterated because of it. But here comes Mike Brown to the podium post-game, and he says, yeah, our defense wasn't good enough, right? We gave up 132 points. Like, he acknowledges the defense isn't good, but then turns it around and says, like, I thought we lost this game because of the offense, right? He kept hitting that point over and over and over again post-game, right? Mike Brown said that this loss is because of Sacramento's offense. 38 points in the paint for the Kings tonight, shooting 41% from inside the paint. 41% from around the rim is not good at all. The Kings were not scoring at the rim. In addition to that, they were not scoring from three-point range. They shot in the 30s from three-point percentage, the low 30s tonight, but we know spray threes is such a massive pillar of Mike Brown's offense that he's talked a lot about over the month of March. In the first half, when the Kings were hanging around with Dallas, despite what Luka was doing, they were 5 of 10 on spray threes, touching the paint, kicking it out to the open shooter. They were shooting 50% on the three-point looks that they're trying to generate. And again, the goal is for the Kings to generate 20 spray three attempts per game. They were halfway there at halftime. They were doing a great job. In the second half, 1 of 4. It's not just they only knocked down one spray three. It's not that just that they only shot 25% on spray threes. They only took 4 of them. That's why Mike Brown is blaming the offense. But on top of that, only 5 fast break points. Only 4 fast break scoring opportunities in this game. Fast break opportunities, playing with pace is the bread and butter of this freaking Sacramento Kings team. And I know this was the second night of a back-to-back, but the Dallas Mavericks were also playing on the second night of a back-to-back too, and they had to travel in to Sacramento while the Kings played last night and then went home and slept in their own beds and stuck with their routine. Right? And the Dallas Mavericks had like 18 fast break points tonight, so they completely beat you at your own game. 5 fast break points, not even nearly enough for Sacramento. They turned the ball over 14 times, leading to 21 points for the Dallas Mavericks. And Mike Brown basically pointed out post-game that the turnovers have something to do with it. But he said, look, even the times that the Kings weren't turning the ball over, the shots that they were generating, the poor shot selection, the missed shots, were causing a lot of the offensive opportunities that the Mavericks were getting. So Dallas was taking advantage of how poorly the Kings were playing offensively to generate opportunities in the fast break, energy, whatever you want to call it, on their offensive side of the ball. Again, more often than not this season, a vast majority of the time, it's been Mike Brown talking about, hey, defensively, we've not been good enough. Hell, at the beginning of March, when the Kings lost, I can't remember what game it was. It might have been the Houston Rockets game when they lost here in Sacramento. I asked Mike about the offense not being good enough, and he said, yeah, but I feel like still it's a defensive problem because our offense has been playing so well in the month of March. At that time, the Kings had scored over 120 points like in 3 straight games or 3 out of 4 games or whatever that was. Now, a handful of weeks later, after the biggest game of the season, Mike Brown saying, our offense is what let us down. That was pretty eye-opening to me. The offense was clearly not good enough, period, but Mike thought that the offense was the root of all the problems for Sacramento tonight. It was because of the bad offense that the Kings scored 132 points. The tone changed with that a lot. And I'm going to still build off that because I actually have a question that I want all of you to answer. I want all of you to ponder about the Sacramento offense because I found myself feeling this way, and I'm trying to figure out if this is just a reaction to this game and how bad this game was, or if it goes deeper than that. I'll share that question with you and ask it of you in just a second. Before that, though, like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? Well, it's America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You don't have to worry about playing against other people, whether it's your friends or those sharks online that make money off of something that's supposed to just be a hobby for you. PrizePicks is just a really simple and fun way to play. You can make picks and submit them in 60 seconds or less. You can do them hours before a game or right before a game starts as soon as you find out which players are playing or which aren't, or certain situations or whatever the case may be. Maybe a coach says something before a game starts that makes you think, hey, maybe this will be a big night for this player. So you go and make a last-minute selection on they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection for scores. There's so many ways to play. They offer quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions like, for example, Taco Tuesday tonight, which the promotion was De'Aaron Fox more or less than 19.5 points. Normally, that's a steal of an offer. Unfortunately, De'Aaron Fox did not cover that tonight. He had only 18 points, and he didn't do too much in the second half, as the Kings didn't do too much in the second half because of that. But PrizePicks offers a variety of ways, not just for you to play, but to help you win. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. So here's the question that I'm going to ask myself, but I want to ask all of you Sacramento Kings fans out there. And feel free to react to it. If you want to answer the question on YouTube in the comment section down below, you can. If you want to send me your answer or your thoughts directly, you can hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. Even if we don't follow each other, you can DM me your answer there, and we can get into a conversation there. You can email me your answer, MattGeorgeSports@gmail.com. If you feel obligated to talk about this, or maybe you don't give me an answer, but maybe just think about it yourself and ask yourself how you're feeling about this Kings team at this point. Are the Kings at a point where offensively you aren't expecting them to be great anymore? They have the capability of being great. They have the capability of going for these offensive explosion nights where everybody's knocking down threes and they can put up 23s in a game and go for 130 points. Or they can have these massive stretches in games where they erase a big lead quickly because of a huge run that they go on, or they can explode for 30 to 40 points in any given quarter, right? They're capable of doing that. They've shown it repeatedly throughout this season. But are you expecting this offense to be great the majority of the time that they're on the floor? If the answer is no, or even if you hesitate in thinking about that, again, I think that speaks to a little bit of where this team has gone, where the journey of this team and the development of this team has taken them. Now, a major talking point throughout the course of this year here on Locked On Kings has been the balance of the offense and defense, and focusing on one, does it take away from the other? With the Kings improving on defense, is it taking away from the offense? And we can reference the playoff series last year against the Golden State Warriors and how the defense looked good, but the offense never looked the same, and pick and choose, give and take, whatever the case may be. It's not a conversation that is new to you. That's why I want to hear your thoughts, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and it's like, the best that the Sacramento Kings have looked this season has been recently, and it's been because of the defense. The offense hasn't fallen off a cliff necessarily, but the Sacramento Kings were scoring their way to victories more often than not last year. The Sacramento Kings took the NBA by storm because of their offense. The fourth quarter clutch scoring from De'Aaron Fox, the offensive explosion nights that made the Sacramento Kings one of the more dangerous and exciting teams in the league. Now, of course, they also kind of had the element of surprise last year that they don't have this year. Teams know how to scout the Kings. Teams know what to expect. They know what's coming. So expectation and time plays a major factor into this. But the Kings were mercenaries on offense last year, right? The Kings were a force on that side of the ball, a force to be feared, a force that gave Sacramento fans so much confidence that more often than not, when the Kings were on the offensive side of the ball, good things were going to happen, and the ball was going to find the way through the hoop in some way, shape, or form. This season, I do not feel justified in still having that confidence. I don't at this point in time. Looking at this game, and again, this could be just an overreaction to the Kings getting their butts kicked in a massive game at home and a kind of a one-game sample size type thing, although they've gotten their butts kicked at home a number of times this season. They've gotten their butts kicked, period, a number of times this season, where they've gone through droughts where they could not score the basketball to save their life. But there was a point in the third quarter before things got out of hand. But the Mavericks built like a 8 to then like 11, then 12, and then 15-point lead. And it got to a point where I was like, yeah, Sacramento is more than capable of putting something together, putting energy together, and coming back into this game. But I never felt like they were going to, because defensively they looked in shambles, and offensively, like Mike Brown was saying, their offense was leading to all of the success for Dallas on the other end of the floor. So I as of right now, I know in theory, if you were to tell me, hey, the Kings are going to play a game and it's going to be a shootout, in theory, you would think, okay, that plays into the hands of the Sacramento Kings. But I think Sacramento has lost that edge at this point where, if it's a shootout, if it's an offensive battle, yeah, the Kings are going to win that. It's not, hey, the Kings have a great chance, because we know the Kings have a great chance in an offensive battle. It's, yeah, the Kings are absolutely going to win that game. That's how we felt last season. I don't feel like that at this point in time, but how are you feeling about that? Let me know. Also, let's talk about Domantas Sabonis a little bit. The night after he broke Kevin Love's double-double streak, we had a huge celebration for it. I came here on the Locked On Kings podcast and spent 15 minutes of the first segment not only gushing about Sabonis, but yelling at the people who were not giving him the credit, yelling at the national, whether it was national media members or the national NBA audience that hasn't been paying attention, saying, you know what, like, you're not giving him the respect and the attention that he deserves. Shame on you, blah, 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 blah. Well, I can't be standing on my pedestal after a victory for Domantas Sabonis and then the very next night ignore when Sabonis did not play well. Tonight, he got his 55th straight double-double. Hooray! 12 points on 3 of 10 shooting from the field. That's dreadful. 11 rebounds, 9 assists, so nearly a triple-double. Also had a couple of blocks, which is nice, but he turned the ball over 4 times. Right? Domantas Sabonis was not good in this game. And what sucks, and I know people are going to take it and run with it, and it pisses me off, but it's not going to be my focus tonight. It's a national TV audience on TNT, and it's a game that is as close to the playoffs as you are going to get in the regular season, at least at this point in time. And in many ways, the wrong and stupid narrative or consensus belief about Domantas Sabonis, about the common basketball fan or common NBA fan and national media member outside of Sacramento, was supported tonight by the way Domantas Sabonis played. In some ways, they were proven right because of how poorly he played. Now, it wasn't just on him, right? The Kings as a whole really, really struggled. The Kings didn't do Sabonis any favors. right? And Dallas threw some different looks at Sabonis defensively. They got under his skin. They frustrated him. He had no answer, and he wasn't getting any help from his teammates. So this is not this game is Domantas Sabonis' fault. Nothing like that at all. But you know me, I always try and keep it real for you, right? I am the biggest Domantas Sabonis fan out there, or at least in the podcast scene, right? I am the most obnoxious mouthpiece for Domantas Sabonis' success, and I have no problem being that because I think he deserves that with all the crap that he deals with outside of Sacramento, and sometimes even in Sacramento. That being said, I'm going to tell it like it is, and the reality is, big game, big stage, national TV, Domas struggled again. Do I think this is indicative of how he's going to be in the playoffs? No, everybody's obligated to have bad nights. More often than not only Domantas Sabonis is he having a good night, he's having a great night. He's done that far more often this season than he's had bad nights. It's unfortunate that this bad night came on a big night and on a big stage. But it's also not, hey, Sabonis' bad night held this team back. Everybody else did their job and Domas didn't. Because there were maybe feelings like that from some people in the playoffs. De'Aaron Fox is doing his job. Malik Monk is doing his job. Keegan Murray's doing his job. Domas, you're not stepping up to the plate like we need you to. Tonight it was nobody's stepping up to the plate. Everybody's bad. And that's why the Kings damn near lost by 40 points. So that perspective is important. But to me, I think it's important, I think it's necessary, and I think it's in a stupid, dumb way. It's my responsibility in some ways to acknowledge and recognize when Domas wasn't good enough and not just ignore or try and hide from. Just like I expect, hey, if you're going to be one of those people, I said it last night, if you're going to be one of those people that only talks about Domantas Sabonis in a bad way, but goes completely silent on social media and ignores when he has major nights or historic performances or stuff like that, and only harps on the bad or only is going to speak up during the playoffs, I don't have any respect for you. But I would be a hypocrite if I did the same thing, only talked and gushed about Domantas Sabonis when he had great nights and then didn't talk about it or ignored it when he had a night like tonight. So Domas wasn't good. The Kings weren't good, but Domas certainly was not good tonight, and unfortunately, that's going to fuel a lot of the fire of the doubters out there. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Mental health is so unbelievably important in this day and age, and thank goodness it is, right? The idea of taking care of yourself mentally, of going and seeing a therapist, of talking to somebody about the struggles you're going through, it's not as taboo as it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. And that even goes in the realm of sports, right? It's not a training staff does not just take care of a team with their injuries and taping up their ankles and massaging the muscles and making sure they're in tip-top physical condition to play their sport at the highest level. You now have members of a medical staff or a team staff that are responsible for helping a player with the psychological load of their lifestyle and the season and the expectations and the money and whatever the case may be. I'm very, very happy that mental health has been taken a lot more seriously in all sports, but especially the NBA. During COVID, I started going and seeing my therapist, TJ, and it seriously changed my life. I go and continue to do it minimum once a month. If there's things that I'm going through, TJ's the first guy that I go to, and it helps to have a licensed professional, someone who is unbiased on my life. Maybe they care about me. You develop a relationship. Like I said, I've been seeing my therapist for 3 years. I have a great relationship with TJ, but he also understands like his job, and he doesn't know my past other than what I tell him, but he has perspective that I don't necessarily get from my mom or my wife or someone who knows me completely and also has a bias towards choosing my side or choosing my perspective over somebody else's perspective or the outside situation. Going and talking to someone about any issue you might have, big or small, is so incredibly important. And if you're considering giving therapy a try, check out BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA, and you get 10% off of your first month when you use that LockedOnNBA code that we have. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. So how should we feel as Sacramento Kings fans after this game? Well, I'm not going to tell you how you're supposed to feel, because you can feel whatever way you feel. If you're angry, if you're sad, if you're like whatever, aloof, like whatever the case, you are entitled to feel how you feel as fans. So this is not by any means me saying you have to feel the same way that I do or you're a bad fan or what. Like, don't take it this way. I'm just kind of how I think we should react to this game as a fan base. It's very different to how I reacted to the Kings' loss against the Washington Wizards a handful of games ago, right? To me, it's a completely different circumstance. One, because the Wizards are garbage, and the Mavericks are on the same tier, kind of a similar level to the Sacramento Kings. Look, we can be and should be disappointed, right? Massive night, massive stage, a game that we've been looking for and had circled on our calendars for, it feels like a month, right? Huge circumstances, and the Kings fell flat on their faces or were straight up dominated on their home floor in the biggest game of the season so far, right? So we can definitely be disappointed and for sure concerned, right? The Kings now a game back of the Dallas Mavericks in the standings. Concerned about how Friday's going to go. The Mavericks beat the Kings so bad in this game that even though Sacramento has another crack and this only counts as one loss, that final score, losing by 36 points, kind of makes you feel like you already lost that second game too. But the good news is, again, the Kings have another crack at Dallas. So in that sense, I think fans should also kind of be curious, maybe cautiously optimistic, maybe pessimistic, whatever the case may be, but curious about, okay, how are the Kings going to respond? It's funny, if you look at basically this entire month of March, you'll see a pattern. Loss, win, win. Loss, win, win. Loss, win, win, and now loss. So what does that tell me? That tells me that Sacramento has a tendency, and we've known this throughout this season and even going back to that last season, the Kings have a tendency to respond well after losses. Now, what they've not been able to do this season that they were able to do last season is string together an extended stretch of winning, right? I think their longest win streak is like 5 or 6 games this year. They haven't done that in a while. So we would love for them to get back to that point. But the Kings have shown an ability to bounce back consistently throughout this season. Will they be able to bounce back against the Dallas Mavericks? How will they overcome this circumstance? What will they do, and how will they look on Friday? Mike Brown shared with us post-game that the Kings have the day off tomorrow, right? They've played 5 games in the last 7 days. They've played a crap ton of basketball. I'm not using that as an excuse tonight because the circumstances were what they were. Big stage, like, I don't accept that excuse. It is what it is. Figure it out and battle hard. Sure, there were opportunities or situations in this game tonight where it looked like, okay, yeah, the tired legs are getting to the Sacramento Kings. But I don't care. I'm not using that as an excuse by any means. This is the only time I'm going to bring it up. But the Kings are having the day off tomorrow, and then on Thursday they'll practice, do film sessions, get back to work, and prepare for what is essentially is Game 2 of a mini playoff series against the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm curious, how will they look on Friday? Will they lose again? Will they lose big? Will they lose small? Will it be a back-and-forth game? Will the Kings come out and step on the throats of the Dallas Mavericks? Will they play pissed off and angry because they were embarrassed on national television? How will the Sacramento Kings look? And also fundamentally, X's and O's. How will they adjust to the way that the Dallas Mavericks were playing against Sacramento? How will they handle Luka? How will they handle Kyrie? How will they handle the rest of the supporting cast of the Mavericks? And maybe in some ways, like, that's why you should feel or could feel okay about just taking this game and kind of brushing it under the rug or throwing it away, right? I was not able to do that after the Wizards loss, and you heard me scream about that on this podcast a lot. But this game, there were circumstances from this game, like, for example, I don't expect the Mavericks support. The Mavericks have been struggling as a three-point shooting team, period, this season, including Luka and Kyrie. So do I expect the Mavericks supporting cast to shoot 14 of 22 from three-point range again on Friday? No, I do not. That being said, if I'm the Kings, I'm not betting on defensively not doing anything different and hoping that they're just going to miss shots because the Kings can't afford to have that way of thinking. Like, they have to change what they're doing, not just hope that the Mavericks are going to shoot worse. But I expect the Mavericks to shoot worse, right? There are things about this game where I'm like, man, that sucks. It's disappointing. But I'm not overly concerned. Maybe some of the things on the offensive side, like we talked about, there's some concern there. There's certainly concern about the playoff race. Look, the Kings lose to the Dallas Mavericks on Friday. They're now 2 full games back of Dallas. And that's not insurmountable with 10 or so remaining games this season. But 2 games can feel like a whole lot. Plus, you don't have your tiebreaker. But now here's the cool thing, right? The Kings win on Friday. As bad as this loss sucked, that means they're 3-1 against the Mavericks throughout this series, including 2 wins in Dallas. 3-1, secured the tiebreaker. So even if they're, after that night, even, like the best case scenario for the Kings now is to draw even with Dallas again. If they do that, if they draw even with Dallas, but they have that tiebreaker, they are ahead of Dallas, meaning Dallas has to actually actively beat Sacramento in the standings in order to take that spot. Because if they tie, the tie goes to the Sacramento Kings. Duh, that's how a tiebreaker works. That's the definition, Matt. Thank you so much. So, again, as much as tonight sucks, if the Kings bounce back on Friday, which the pattern would show and my expectation of this team say that they will play significantly better here on Friday night than they did tonight. If they don't, you best believe I'll be screaming at this camera after that game. But if they win, some would maybe expect when they win, this all goes away, and in reality, they accomplish their ultimate goal, which is splitting these 2 games bare minimum. So I'm not necessarily feeling great or optimistic about it. I'm not feeling hopeful after a beatdown like the Kings just suffered tonight. But I'm able to kind of take it for what it is and wait and see, right? I'm waiting and seeing what the Kings look like on Friday before making a decision. And some would call that growth from me based off of how I reacted after that Wizards game and after some of the losses this season. So we'll see how they look. You want to answer the question that I threw out to you? You want to share with me how you're feeling after this game? You want to talk about anything Sacramento Kings related? Hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSac. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. I appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. I have to deal with the smugness of Nick Angstead and the Locked On Mavs podcast. We'll be doing a crossover pod here probably tomorrow or coming up in the next couple of days before Kings and Mavs Part 2. So that'll be fun to deal with, but go and check out that podcast as well. Plus, I'll have another post-game pod for you after Friday, win or loss, so I can't wait to see you then. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.